We are back on MorningLine. Thanks for joining us. Nick Barris here along with malpractice attorney Clint Kelly there on the shores of Pebble Beach. Probably going to go do 18 rounds later. That's not Pebble Beach, is it? Where is that?
No, this is Half Moon Bay Country Club, which is outside of San Francisco, but it sure looks like Pebble Beach or England or somewhere like that. I played golf there one time, and I just love the view, and that's why I put it up here. It looks better than the back of my home office.
I love it, man. The wonders of a green screen. That looks awesome. Hey, listen, we got a call for you from Ron. Let's go to Ron. Ron, good morning. Hey, Ron.
Yeah.
Hey, what's on your mind?
Question.
Sure.
I got a question for him. Don't you think that they say the only way to straighten the police department out is to retrain the officers and stuff? But don't you really think that the only thing they've got to do is explain to these officers, we're going to do away with qualified immunity law, and you're going to be liable if you do anything or shoot somebody when you shouldn't? You have to be awful careful how you arrest people.
Sure, but let me ask you, how does that relate to medical malpractice? You want to relate that to a doctor in the same way, or?
Yeah, the doctors and all of them. If you don't, every big business and stuff is going to get that qualified immunity law, and you can't keep them from it. I don't believe if you give it to the lawmakers and you give it to the public officials around. Why is it not legal for everybody to have it? They gave it to themselves, so they should give it to everybody else. So,
yeah, I think Ron maybe is on to something there from the degree of, what we see happening with qualified immunity in some cases. And that kind of sounds like what you said they've got under this new law with regard to certain malpractice. And you just wonder, and as a consumer, me and Ron worry that if that happens, they're going to feel they're protected, and you just have this concern that they're not going to always be as diligent as they should.
Yeah, Ron brings up an important point, and he parlayed this into the medical malpractice arena.
Yeah.
Remember I told you bad laws protect bad actors.
Right.
And what he's saying is that the qualified immunity that has been conferred on police officers and their departments for decades now has in essence rewarded bad behavior, because it is so hard to hold a police officer legally accountable when he shoots somebody in the back. I mean, that's been around for many years, and the argument that's being made now, and I believe it's going to gather momentum as we move forward, is that if you remove that qualified immunity from police officers and subject them to the same negligence standard that applies to me as a professional, to you as a professional, Nick, or to a doctor or nurse as a professional, that will encourage police officers to act more professionally and to be more cautious when they are making arrests, so that they don't shoot somebody in the back, because they know if they do, they're going to wind up in litigation for a long time. They're going to have insurance through a bonding company. And the idea being that these people will be more likely to follow the rules. I think that's what Ron's point is. And that's why I don't like qualified immunity. That's why I don't like this COVID-19 liability immunity bill that was just passed, because it rewards bad behavior, or maybe the better word is it protects bad behavior. It's bad public policy. It encourages bad behavior, and the person who suffers is the consumer. That's who this law is targeted towards, is the consumer, because if the consumer has no legal recourse, Nick, they have to eat the loss.
Exactly.
That's not right. When it's through no fault of their own, and there is fault on the other side, that person who's at fault should be the one that bears the loss, not the innocent injured person.
And have to some degree face the music, and if they don't, there's no reason for them to change, is there?
Sure. No, look, Ron's point is spot on.
All right, let's take a call from Jeff. Jeff, good morning. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, how are you? Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
Sometime back, I was referred to a podiatrist, so when I called to make the appointment, gave them my insurance numbers over the phone, and everything was good. And so I arrived at the office, gave them my insurance numbers again. Everything was good. And then they sent me a bill to pay out of pocket. Now, how can they do this? And what action can I take?
So now, were you treated by them? And so they said that your insurance was going to be good, and then they got back to you and said the insurance is not paying, so now you have to pay?
Yes, sir. I'm not in their network, and they should have known that twice before, when I gave them my number.
Okay. I don't know if you have a suggestion for him on that, Clint. It's not malpractice per se, but you give your card, and I do it before. I've been places before where, for whatever reason, my card did not work, and they say, well, we don't take your insurance here. I say, okay, I've got to go somewhere else or I'll pay out of pocket. If they tell you they take it, and then later say, oh, we were wrong, what do you think of that?
The same thing happened to me years ago that happened to Jeff. I had a lab test done through Quest Diagnostics that was not in my network that I had purchased, the healthcare plan. And I wound up having to pay $380 for a test that otherwise wouldn't have cost me more than $100. I called my family physician. I said, what gives here? Why did you guys do this? Mm-hmm. And they said, look, it's out of our hands. Once we submit the testing, it gets piped to whoever company gets it first. It's a priority basis. And they don't look to see which network you're in. They just do the test and send the bill. I don't know the legal recourse for Jeff, unfortunately. I wound up having to eat it. And hopefully that will never happen to me again, because I did, raise a little cane with my family practitioner that I want to make sure from now on you send the labs to people who are covered by my health insurer. But problem is, once the test is done, the money's owed.
Yes. I bet you that's happened to a lot of people. And there's really not much you can do about it once it happens, except then follow up the way you did. So I'm curious, Clint, what other types of cases are you seeing right now? I'm just wondering if anything else has cropped up. I don't know if you're involved in any class action stuff at the moment, but just curious what else you've been dealing with besides, I know that COVID stuff's taking up a lot of your time.
Sure, but there are plenty of other cases that I still handle that involve acts of medical neglect or negligence. One case that I've got now, and I have seen more of these, are aortic dissections. These are people who have a balloon, if you will, that grows on their aorta. That's the big vessel that feeds the big artery that feeds your body, one that looks like a question mark over the heart. And it goes all the way down to your pelvis. And below the heart is a particularly tricky area where people who have problems with their arteries can thin out the wall of that aorta, and it causes a balloon. If you think of it as like a garden hose that begins to the outside wall of the garden hose gets weak and it balloons up.
Is it like an aneurysm? Is it an aneurysm?
That's exactly right. It's what it's called. I'm glad you said that. It's an abdominal aortic aneurysm.
Oh, those are scary.
And I've got one of those cases, and it's the second one I've seen in the year. And the reason why I've gotten pretty good at handling those cases, because I know what the standard of care is. But the reason why I want to discuss that with you is when you were going down your list of cases, high priority cases, did you see John Ritter's case on there?
Oh, I know. I'm familiar with that case, but let me see. I don't know. This was more relatively recently, and Ritter's was a while back, but I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, I don't see it on this list. It's not on this one.
For those who are watching who may not remember, John Ritter was the actor on Three's Company.
Oh, yeah.
He was, has been in a number of different movies. Really beloved actor. Was married to Amy Asbeck, who was on Wings for a while. Anyway, he went to have some body testing done, a body scan, and there was a weakness in the arterial wall that was missed. And I'll come back to that in just a second. But anyway, he goes back home. The following year, he starts having extreme pain below his, in his abdominal area, feels sick, sweaty. He goes in to the emergency room. There's an x-ray ordered for him that is not carried out for reasons we'll never know. And the following day, he's dead. And he sued the hospital. He sued the ER physician. I say he, that means his wife, Amy Asbeck, and was able to obtain a $14 million settlement against the hospital and the emergency room because they clearly mismanaged his presentation when he came to the ER. But remember, we were talking about turning down money, and the decisions that are made, and ultimately the client's decision. Ritter's wife or widow sued the cardiologist and the radiologist who read the body scan that prior year, claiming that their negligence led to his death, because if they had communicated to him and to other of his doctors that he was having weakening or thinning of the arterial wall, they could have saved his life. And my understanding is he turned down $10 million from both of those doctors. I say he, I keep saying that. His wife turned down $10 million. They went to trial and they lost.
Wow.
So that's why I tell you that you have to be careful, even if you're a celebrity, that doctors and hospitals generally win most of these cases, and that was a $10 million mistake by the widow.
Oh, it was? Okay, and so they lost there, but I thought you just said that they did end up getting $14 million, though, right? From the hospital, but they could have gotten more money from the doctors.
Instead of getting $24 million total, they got 14. And remember, that seems like a lot of money, but Nick, he had an earning capacity as an actor to make somewhere in the neighborhood of $35 million over the course of his life. This was one of those cases where there were big stakes.
Yeah. And by the way, do you recall why it was he originally went to have that full scan? Was he having some symptoms? Because you don't just ordinarily go in for a full scan for no reason, right?
He was having some symptoms. That's why he had a cardiologist, and the cardiologist ordered the scanning, the body scan, and the radiologist read it in a way that didn't raise any suspicions. The cardiologist read it, and he basically just relied on what the radiologist told him. And so there was no communication about what was actually on there. And there were experts who looked at that and said they could see the beginnings of a dissection on there, which should have raised red flags that he needed to be treated for that. There are treatments for that. There's blood pressure medication, but ultimately you can have surgery to put a graft in to prevent the leak. But anyway, he had a claim, $10 million on the table. He turned it down, got nothing.
And do you have any indication? And yet, what you just said, how the heck did they win? Is it just juries don't want to give these awards? What?
The doctors were able to convince the jury that even if they had reported the dissection and he had been referred to a doctor, the doctor that he would be referred to would not have changed the treatment any. In other words, it didn't matter. That's what we call a causation defense. You can prove negligence, Nick, but you got to prove that next element, which is the negligence caused the injury. And in Ritter's case, those doctors convinced the jury that their negligence didn't make any difference in the ultimate outcome.
Wow. Like you said, man, sometimes take the bird in hand. We'll take a break. When we come back, our final segment with Clint Kelly right after this. It's interesting.